Hi there, esteemed audience, and welcome to another episode of Middle Grade Ninja. I'm your host, Rob Camp. As you know, I'm the author of Banneker Bones and the Giant Robot Bees, its sequel, Banneker Bones and the Alligator People, and the upcoming third, yet to be revealed, Banneker Bones Adventure. These are the stories of 11-year-old biracial boy detective Banneker Bones and his cousin Ellicott Skullworth as they ride on jetpacks and use all manner of gadgets to save Latimer City from monsters such as giant robot bees, alligator people, and the third yet to be revealed monster. So if you enjoy the Athena Protocol, if you're the sort of person that likes your Mission Impossible, James Bond, Batman-esque adventure, Banneker Bones and the Giant Robot Bees is the book for you. It is available as a paperback, an audiobook narrated by the exquisite David Radke, and the ebook is free to download whenever you're watching or listening to this, wherever fine ebooks are sold. Under the super secret pen name Robert Kent, I've written some novels for older readers, such as my young adult novel, All Together Now a Zombie Story, and All Right Now a Short Zombie Story. And then, of course, the Book of David, which is a 5-volume serial horror novel written in the style of Stephen King. It's about an atheist who purchases a haunted house that then begins to give him religious visions involving flying saucers. It's a good time. The further it goes, it's crazier. The crazier it gets. It's 5 chapters long. And I say chapters, the 5th chapter is the longest book I've yet written. So it is just a long, suspenseful horror novel that builds as you go and gets wildly out of control by book 5. And I figure that's your fault because you had 4 opportunities to stop reading. And if you're still with me, I just go as crazy as that story will allow for, which is just out there. If you're curious, you want to dip your toe in the Book of David universe, you can download the first chapter as an ebook for free whenever you're watching or listening to this. So download chapter 1, The Book of David by Robert Kent. If you enjoy it, come back and see me for chapters 2, 3, 4, and 5 with money. As always, to keep up with what's going on with the show, what's going on with me, what's going on with authors and publishing professionals cool enough to appear on Middle Grade Ninja, go to middlegradeninja.com. I've got interviews with hundreds of authors, publishing professionals, and other folks that you want to read, as well as the archive of all of the podcast episodes and a listing of upcoming guests. So that's it. My guest today, I couldn't be more thrilled. We're going to be talking with Shamim Sarif. Shamim, how are you this afternoon?
I am doing very well. Thank you very much, Robert. Thanks for having me on the show.
Well, thanks so much for making the time. We were talking just a moment ago that we're sandwiched in here between a book launch party you said in New York and a book launch party there in Toronto. Plus, you're starting a new movie. Do you get a day off this week, or are you just going?
No, there hasn't been a day off for quite a while. But you know what? I'm not going to complain because, so often we have a lot of days off as writers and directors, and they're not necessarily what we choose. So I'm just going with it.
Oh, so periods of more days off than you'd care for. But if you would, give esteemed audience a little bit of an overview of your background, both as a filmmaker and an author.
Sure. Well, I'm lucky enough to tell stories in more than one medium. So I started out writing short stories, and then my first novel, The World Unseen, got published. And around the same time, I was writing screenplays for film because that was always something that I loved and was interesting to me. So I've kind of pursued parallel careers as a novelist, screenwriter, and then segued into being a film director. I've made 3 features and 1 documentary. And the features are I Can't Think Straight, The World Unseen, and Despite the Falling Snow, most recently, with Rebecca Ferguson and Charles Dance, all of which I wrote and directed, and which I was lucky enough to get 47 awards between all these 3.
And 47 awards. I don't know that we can chalk all of those up to luck.
Oh, no, I'll give you a couple. And then in the meantime, I've written 3 novels. The 4th of which is the Athena Protocol, which is the one that is launching right now in the U.S. and Canada. That's right there. The very one. I have my own copy right here.
There we are.
And the Athena Protocol is my first foray into the thriller genre, and it's about a rogue agency run by 3 very successful women who take on human trafficking and issues that deal with women and children that governments don't have the time or budget to deal with. And they run a team of younger female agents who are the ones that get in there in the field and deal with these nasty specimens.
It's a wonderful, thrilling tale. I enjoyed it. In fact, let's just we're going to talk about a little bit of everything. As much as you'll humor me for today, I want to pick your brain about filmmaking, writing. I know you're writing a musical. So all kinds of questions for you about all of that stuff. But let's start with the Athena Protocol. So I guess my first question for you is, what made you, after writing for adults, making movies for adults, what made you want to write a young adult novel?
Sure. Well, the idea for the Athena Protocol came to me from going to tech conferences and just seeing people who've made a lot of money, who've made their mark in the world, maybe in technology and whatever it is. Now they're starting to want to kind of turn their attention to the world's big issues like hunger and climate change. And so I was thinking about how you would deal with something like slavery, trafficking, because issues to do with women and children, also the LGBTQ community, have always been very important to me to highlight in my storytelling. I never thought of the Athena Protocol specifically as a YA novel. I didn't think, I'm going to write a YA novel. I knew it was going to be an action-adventure thriller. But then I thought about writing it from the perspective of Jessie, who's the youngest agent on the team. She has a lot to learn. She's the most immature, but I wanted to have somebody who could have a really interesting character arc. She's super smart, maybe not as emotionally smart as she is intelligently smart, but that's something she learns to along the way in interacting with her team. So I think because it's from her perspective, and there's a little sarcasm, there's a little humor, there's the stresses with her mom, I guess it fit also into the YA category as well as just a regular adult book.
Yeah, I agree. I ask that question on a regular basis, and yet I also kind of hate it just a little bit because there is no young adult story, there is no middle grade story. There's stories that happen to feature enough details that you can, when you go to shelve them, you can put them in a place where they're likely to attract the readers that would like them. But I think the Athena Protocol would appeal to readers who aren't yet teens and readers who are well beyond their teens.
Yeah, I mean, it's only been out a couple of days, but the first few reviews that I've been getting by email and on Amazon and Goodreads have been 5 stars from people who are not actually young adults, who are, I think, women more in their 30s, 40s, couple I know in their 20s. So it seems so far to be cutting across ages, because there's a range of ages with the 6 women in the novel too. So
I assume at this point you've got a built-in audience that will look forward to whatever you decide to create next.
Well, there is that, and they've been incredibly supportive of me over the years. So yeah, I'm really lucky that I Can't Think Straight in the World Unseen particularly grew this amazing fan base. I think there was a dearth of stories for women of color, for young LGBTQ women, and young men too. And I think that those early stories, I Can't Think Straight in particular, as a book and a movie, appealed to a lot of people who didn't have those kinds of role models or people like them that were being represented in movies and films. Now representation is a lot wider, but it wasn't at the time. So that really stood out, and I think it made a huge impact. So a lot of those fans have followed me on my journey up till now, which is wonderful.
Let me ask you a dumb question in the hope of prompting you to give a great answer. Why, and I think the answer is sort of implicit within the story, but again, dumb question. Why was it important to you that all of the founders of the Athena Protocol, all of the agents, everyone involved, be women, and many of them women of color, and also that their missions surround, not exclusively, but very much around freeing and doing right in the world for women?
Yeah. Look, I think the diversity element came because that's what my life looks like, and I think it's what a lot of people's lives look like. And it's now the representation is getting stronger on screen and in corporate environments in real life. But it really, when the last 20, 30 years that I've been around, that was not the case. And so I felt a kind of responsibility to put out there the kind of work that reflected me, that reflected the world I wanted to live in. And so hence the diversity and having women particularly. And then the fact that they are women helping other women, we live in a kind of bubble where, I get to be in Toronto, I'm in London, I'm in New York, it's LA, it's all fantastic and it's liberal, and I'm surrounded by people who think very similarly to me in many respects. But much of the world is still not like that. And I think, 50% of the world's resources, i.e. women, are being underused in a large chunk of the world. Places you can obviously think of places like Saudi Arabia, where women don't even have the right, to vote or drive or work or anything without the permission of their husbands, or going out on the street without being covered. And then that carries through into so many different countries where women don't have the cultural or legal rights over their bodies, over the way they use their time. So I felt like women needed that helping hand. And the Athena Protocol, it's about this group of agents, and they work internationally. This one is set a little bit in Africa and West Africa, a little bit in Eastern Europe, mostly in Eastern Europe. And the next one, because there's a sequel, will be in India. So, I think there are so many interesting places to explore the cultural binds that women and girls still find themselves restricted by.
And when can we look forward to reading the sequel?
The sequel is out in October 2020, so literally same time next year. See you again.
Oh, beautiful.
So yeah, that's kind of, it's a 2-book deal with HarperCollins, and so I've just delivered the first draft of that, and I'm working on edits shortly, and that's called The Shadow Mission. But it's also going to keep the same characters in play. It'll still be Jesse, Hal, and Caitlin working to bring down another dodgy group of people.
Good. There's a surplus of dodgy people in the world, so they need to get out there and do their best. So there's definitely a second book, which I guess you're writing just like in your break. Your breaks between filming and writing your musical and everything else you've got going on. And then is it your hope that this would be kind of a recurring series that goes on forever? Do you have some planned ending point in your head?
I would love that to be a recurring series. For me, I think that there are two elements for me to the Athena Protocol. One is the mission, which I think is, it's the core plot of how are they going to bring down this human trafficker. And there are the reversals and the twists and the turns. But the most important thing to me is the character development. And I think with these 6 women, they've all got complex backgrounds. I think that the potential for them to grow character-wise through a series of novels or a TV series or a series of films, whatever that might be, is infinite, And I think that's what, for me, makes it really compelling, is that while they're going through all of these missions, they're learning so much about themselves, about each other, about how to work together. And for me, that's what makes it really exciting as a series. So yeah, I could see this going on a while. And certainly at the end of the second book too, Jesse makes another turn into a different kind of worldview, which I think will keep it all sparky and exciting.
So I just heard you say she becomes a supervillain. Is that right?
No, that's not what I said, Robert. But,
we'll have to wait till next October to find out. We can't spoil the book this early on.
It's a toll. Let's say that happened.
So, let me ask you this, because I'm assuming this is inspired by a love of things like Charlie's Angels, Mission Impossible, James Bond, that kind of thing. Were there any particular direct influences?
Well, listen, I've grown up with two. We have 2 teenage boys who are 20 and 16 now. So we've watched every action movie under the sun over the last 15 years. You can be sure of that. But the ones that really stuck with me were the ones like I think of Athena more equating to the Bourne series, if anything, the Bourne Identity and onwards, because there's a character journey involved. Die Hard, Lethal Weapon, those kinds of movies that have that character arc that is so crucial to the plot, I think were really exciting to me. And I hadn't really felt that I'd seen that with women, and I hadn't seen women who go through the kinds of things that the Athena agents go through and feel the fallout. And I think that when you've got young women fighting trafficking, seeing difficult things, fighting for their lives on a daily basis, getting hurt, and recovering, there's a fallout to that emotionally. And I wanted to have a group of women who are there for each other. They fight, they argue, they've got their differences, but they're also there to kind of help each other through those traumatic times. And I thought that would be really an interesting thing to explore, which I felt I hadn't seen so far in adventure and thriller books.
Another dumb question, because it's one that answers itself, but I want to hear your perspective on it. as I was reading, it occurred to me that this is, the what's the word I'm looking for? The basic framework, the pitch, is not something that we've never heard before. We know we've got. If I may use profanity on my own show, little badasses that are going to go out there in the world and do badass stuff. We've seen that before, but the focus is not just that, because there's Kit, who is Jesse's mother, involved within there, and there's a lot of emotional stuff that these stories tend to gloss over a little bit. You mentioned, yes, okay, a Lethal Weapon, the original one, had a nice character arc, and then by 2, I wasn't really sure what was happening with the characters, and by 4, like, Danny Glover's never going to retire, get out of here. So why was it essential to include these character arcs? And also, follow-up question to that, how will you keep that going through the series when Jesse becomes a supervillain with powers?
Well, listen, I think you touched on it when you said that you can have smart, badass women who know how to fight their way out of trouble, think their way out of trouble, code their way out of trouble. But what do they do when they get home and they have to interact with their mom, who's also the founder of Athena, or and they have those clashes that all mothers and daughters do, or they have a clash with one member of the team, and suddenly they're not speaking to each other, and that becomes a real issue between Hala and Jesse through this book. How do you repair that friendship, especially when you're under so much pressure at the same time? It's not like they're going to work in an office and then coming home, having a plate of pasta and having to think about how they get on again. They're literally having to fight for each other and now against each other. It for me, that's what the real excitement is in this thriller. It's how do these women emotionally get on with each other and figure out their messy personal lives, as well as the craziness of being in the field. Because, that's what agents do. It's not like they live in these solitary worlds where they're just badass at home and they're badass on the field. It's, they go home and they're somebody's daughter or somebody's friend or somebody's partner. And there are stresses associated with that. And I think ongoing, those are infinite numbers of stories that could be really exciting to explore. Caitlin, one of Jesse's teammates, has been in the military in the U.S. and she served in Iraq, and she has, recurring PTSD that's something that she has to figure out how to deal with. Apart from the fact that she's so competent in the field, emotionally there are still issues that she needs to get through.
I don't want to spoil, but there's the inciting incident where that sets Jesse off a little bit on her journey on our opening action sequence, where she makes a decision that then is going to haunt her. So without spoiling, there's some murder involved, and there's just real fallout and repercussions from that. So how do you prepare for that, and why is it important to you to show that aspect?
Well, I think, that's something that I've learned in my storytelling, because I've always been very character driven. And therefore, I think character is conflict usually. And I like page turners, even in a literary novel like my previous ones, like The World Unseen. But with the Athena Protocol being a thriller, I really wanted it to start with a big conflict. And I didn't want that conflict to be, here's a problem over here, let's go solve it. It's not just an external problem. It's the fact that Jessie crossed the line. She broke orders in a rogue agency. And as Lee says, this is a rogue agency. We cannot have a rogue agent. We've all got to live by the code that Athena sets. So if in chapter 1, Jessie's gone over that line and gets fired from Athena, which unfortunately everybody who's reviewed the book has mentioned, so I figure we might as well just go with it. By chapter 2, she's already got an uphill struggle to get back, not only to help the team bring down the human trafficker, but she's not on the team, so she's not really legally allowed to help them. So now she's got to claw her way back, do it on her own. She's getting deeper into trouble without her team watching her back. And at the same time, she's going after the human trafficker while her team are coming after her. So I thought, how many more obstacles can we pile on this girl, and let's see how she deals with it, because she's a smart girl. So let's put her under some pressure.
Well, at least through the first few chapters, she still has all of her hands, all of her feet. plenty of ways to hurt her yet. Well, what did I? Because, well, one, it was such a wonderful moment of debate for the reader, because again, without spoiling, I'm on board with what Jesse did. I my biggest complaint was they didn't kill more people. Yeah. They go in there with sleeping darts. I'm like, sleeping darts? No, not these guys.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't feel. I don't think we feel terribly bad about what she's done, because we understand. But the thing for me was to understand, not judge the characters, just understand where they're coming from. Then, if you as a reader want to say that was just bad, Jesse deserves to be fired, that's your call. And if you say, you know what, I would have done the same, I think that's great. As long as we're understanding what Jesse was feeling at that moment, then I've done my job as the author.
Oh, I would have done the same, and I also felt that Jesse deserved to be fired. I wanted it both ways.
There you go.
That's as much as I could dance around it without just flat out telling esteemed audience what happened. So pick up the book. You're going to get excited. I wanted to ask you, though, a little bit about that plot construction. Why is it useful to you to have Jesse as, I mean, we go to pains to establish this ultra elite force. So two questions I had about that were, one, why immediately break Jesse off from it and have her go a little rogue? And two, why does that force need to be outside of like a government branch? It's not, is it MI6 that James Bond's a part of? It's not that. It's more like group Batman, where everybody is tossing in their money and doing it secretly on the sly. So yeah, both those questions. Why is it important that Jesse is rogue, and why is it important that the Athena Protocol is not a government institute?
Yeah. Well, if I'll do it backwards. So I'll say, well, for Athena, I think it came from what the meaning of it was to the founders, and they specifically wanted to deal with things that they felt governments were not dealing with, because Lee is a technology tycoon with a ton of money. Peggy is a former U.S. ambassador who's worked within the halls of government, and Kit is a British former music star who's also been out there campaigning for women and children. But none of them feel that the work that they've done has made a significant difference. It makes a little difference here and there. So for them, they're trying to deal with the stuff the government specifically won't deal with, and it's hard to imagine CIA or MI6 or MI5 setting up a Black Ops, division specifically to deal with human trafficking or girls being married off underage or whatever the issues are that a lot of women and girls face. So I think that's why it's the meaning of their mission that means that they have to operate outside the government. And it also adds another layer of danger, because these are people that are going to be completely in jail or worse if they get found out in taking vigilante justice into their own hands. So again, it added another layer of conflict that I really liked. And then in terms of Jesse going rogue from the rogue agency, that was really, for me, built out of Jesse's character arc, because I wanted her to be somebody who learned a big lesson in this book and who changed significantly from who she was at the beginning as she learned to grow up and mature. And I think at the beginning she's a little arrogant. She's part of this elite force. She's probably the most talented agent on the force. And she's a little bit, they can't do without me. And when she finds that they can, it's a big shock to her ego and her system. And then she has to really work her way back onto the team and prove herself and earn back the trust that she's broken with her teammates. And for me, character-wise, I just thought that was a really exciting story to follow. So, yeah, that was why.
They can't really do it without Jesse.
No, I know, and that was the other. I guess I just like to keep challenging myself as a writer. I'm like, okay, how are we going to now get through this where Jesse has to be an integral part of solving this without making the others look like they don't know what they're doing? And I think, it was to find a twist halfway through the book that made it, oh, okay, you could imagine that the rest of Athena had missed this detail, but that was now crucial and that Jesse has the details of. So I can't say any more than that without spoiling the plot.
No, we're walking a very dangerous line coming right up to it.
It's fine.
I wanted to follow that up though with how much research did you do in creating the Athena Protocol? And because it's very well thought out. I bought that this could be a thing if billionaires were more benevolent.
Well, we might not know. It could be a thing. But I think, well, listen, I think some billionaires are benevolent. I think about something like Bill Gates, who's going out there and solving issues to do with sanitation now, for example, or malaria. that really no government was tackling. So, I think that potential is there, and as more individuals and corporations get wealthier and wealthier, I hope that they take that responsibility very seriously. It's something that I think is very important. And I've droned on so long, I forgot what your actual question was, David. Robert, sorry.
Oh, I was just asking about how much research. Although that is an interesting point, because you were at the TED Talks. I assume you've been in the room with some billionaires now and again.
I have indeed, and look, I've been in the room over the years with billionaires who have lived the party life. I haven't stayed in that room very long, I can tell you, because it does nothing for me. Where it's just kind of the conspicuous consumption and the spraying bottles of champagne or whatever. That kind of world does not appeal in the least to me, and I think that's for me where I began to formulate my idea that when you have wealth, when you have influence, celebrity, that there comes with that kind of a certain responsibility to stand up for something, to vocalize what you believe in. And I found that the kinds of people who were attending TED were people who were interested in the issues facing the world and how they could be part of that. Not always, but most of the time. And so those kinds of people I just find really interesting. And I think, the people who've made a lot of money building their own companies generally have incredible skills with problem solving and building companies, systems, all of that kind of thing. And when they turn their attention to doing that in the nonprofit sector, the results can be pretty great. Also with the Athena Protocol, I should just mention that we've always tried to, with our books and movies, do charity premieres or to give back in some way, rather than waiting to become a billionaire, which may or may not happen. You have to sell an awful lot of books. My wife and I have always tried to find ways to do that. And so with the Athena Protocol specifically, because it touches on human trafficking in its core plot, we teamed up with a wonderful charity called Headwaters Relief that helps to educate survivors of disaster areas about the dangers of human trafficking and how to avoid it. Because in areas like Nepal after the hurricane, or in New Orleans after Katrina, the incidence of trafficking goes up hundreds of times because people prey on people who've just lost their homes, they've lost their businesses. Sometimes these kids have lost their families and they become very vulnerable to human trafficking. So Headwaters does amazing work with volunteering and with educating kids about that, often using stories and books. So whenever anybody buys a copy of the Athena Protocol through the Amazon links on my site, I will donate my affiliate fees to Headwaters. So that was kind of like a small way for us to kind of chip in and make a difference.
Good. So anybody that's watching or listening to this, buy it through your website, which is
shamimsarif.com.
There you go. That way, not only are you going to get a great story, you're going to do some good in the world.
There you go. We just thought that it's a small way. Nobody pays any more, but any affiliate commission that I get from Amazon or IndieBound will go straight to Headwaters Relief.
And any affiliate link of mine that you click on, that money will go straight toward my mortgage. But I aspire.
Nothing wrong with that. We should never apologize for trying to make money as authors, because that keeps us entertaining people and doing the work we do.
Well, I hope that lots of billionaires buy copies of the Athena Protocol and read it and get inspired, and we make this to be a real deal. I wanted to ask you, well, I have a lot of questions about the writing of this, but let's start with the opening line, because I'm a sucker for a great opening. I try to drill it into my head, as well as the head of any writing students I have, that if you don't nail your opening, don't worry about your middle or your ending. That's not going to be a problem. I don't do this often, but I'm going to read just a paragraph of your own book to you because I love this opening line. So here it is. Sometimes I wonder if the world might just look better through a rifle scope. Crisper, clearer, narrowed down, less messy. I love that. I love that opening perspective. Why was that the best place to open this novel, and how long did you spend coming up with that opening?
I felt I wanted something that took you straight into Jesse's head. And Jesse is a spy looking down the barrel of a gun. You're into the mission without knowing why is she looking. I wanted to have questions come up. Why is she looking through a rifle scope? who is she to be looking through a rifle scope, and who's she pointing at? These are all the things that occur to us when we hear that. But I also wanted to bring us into the head of a young woman who hasn't got the world figured out. And so I thought it might be nice that for her, looking through this rifle scope is not just something tense to do before a mission, but something that actually is a relief. It kind of brings the world into focus, and she doesn't have to think about all the messy stuff out there. So now we're thinking, here's a girl who hasn't quite figured out the world, but she has it figured out when she's looking down the barrel of a gun. I don't know about you, but for me, I'm asking 15,000 questions already in my head. So I'm hoping that a reader will want to go on to the next line in the next paragraph and see what's going on with Jessie.
Yeah, no, right away. I know the type of character that we're dealing with. I'm encouraged to know more. Now, if the next couple of lines are, and that's why I want to take out a bunch of innocent people. Oh, well, I don't know about that, but so there is a little bit more needed. And we get there quickly. It's a wonderful opening. So how long did you spend on that, or was that always the first line?
It wasn't, no. I had started with a paragraph that was a little bit more descriptive of the surroundings, the smells, because I also wanted to bring us into Jessie's head. But I think I was doing it in a little bit of a more literary way, which I don't think would have been bad. But I think this came around when I was doing my major second round of edits, when I finished my first draft. And I thought, this is an exciting story. Let's get straight into this moment. And I think it may also have been influenced a little bit by my filmmaking career, because there's a way in which an image, paints 1,000 words. And I thought if there was anywhere where that could cross over into a novel, it should be the first line of a thriller, where you can almost see that that's the view that you have. You don't know where you are, you don't know what the operation is, but you know that you're in the middle of something that's going to get exciting pretty quickly.
So presumably then when you make the movie version, there might be a title card of this studio, these guys put up the money, these folks did this, and then that will be the opening shot, I assume?
You never know. And then, you know what, after all that, it'll probably, start out with the rain-swept street in London. Who knows? Now that I've written a perfect movie line, let's hope it gets in there. I'll have to see when I write the script.
And the Athena Protocol is in production as a movie now, right? Or is in some form of development? Is maybe the right term?
It's in development, I would say, not production as yet. We've I was really lucky again with the early reviews. The trade reviews were exceptional. So, based on that, before my agent even had time to go out, there were a few companies in Hollywood which contacted us to say, let's talk about these. So we're in exclusive negotiations with one right now, and I hope that works out. And if that does, then we will develop it as soon as possible for a TV or feature film.
I assume you would be attached to direct, or at the very least willing.
Well, that's part of the negotiation, because it's interesting. Because for me, I've always done our movies very independently under my own production companies. I've written and directed everything. With this, I think the canvas of the Athena Protocol is rather bigger, and I think the budget would be bigger than maybe budgets we've done in the past. But having said that, I think I've got the hopefully the credibility and the experience to be involved in this. So yes, writing the first draft of the screenplay or the pilot is very important to me.
So, next question for that would be then, knowing that you've already made multiple films, award-winning films, and had quite a bit of success in that arena, why was it ideal for you to start this off as a series of novels as opposed to a screenplay that you put into production immediately?
I think it was just I felt the novel quite strongly, and I hadn't written the novel for several years, since Despite the Falling Snow, because I'd been busy writing and directing these 3 movies, and I hadn't actually sat down and written the novel, and I kind of missed it. I felt that I wanted to have that experience again of being really within a character's head and building, using words to weave together that story. So it just came naturally to me to do that first.
Does that impact you when you're writing, knowing that obviously this is a very cinematic concept, and I'm sure it was never far from your mind that, hey, this might make a movie one of these days? Does do you start thinking about budget concerns when you're writing? Like, I'd love to do this. Well, we'll never get the money for that. Maybe a little less dramatic on the action. Does that play a role?
No, it doesn't. I try to put that out of my mind when I'm writing a book, because you know what, I don't want my imagination to be limited at all. Having said that, I'm not the kind of writer who is thinking about how big I can make this explosion, or how many rockets I can have falling out of the sky. I'm pretty much character driven. So even a lot of the tension and action in this book is character driven. So Jessie may end up getting into a fight because she said the wrong thing to the wrong person, rather than because there was a random person on the street. You know what I don't like coincidences. I like everything to be character driven. So a lot of the action is manageable. It's often hand-to-hand fighting. It's breaking out of situations. It's climbing, hacking, doing some really exciting stuff that bring our characters' strengths to bear. But no, I don't think about the budget. I think about the budget, of course, when you end up doing the screenplay and the TV show and whatever. But I try never to compromise on what the vision is. But there's, I think independent film has been a good training for how do you work within the confines of a certain budget or a certain world without compromising your creative vision. And I think I've gotten kind of good at creatively managing that process.
And that being said, I didn't think there was anything in here that would be so wildly out of control for a budget that you probably couldn't make it just you and two other people on on pizza money. But I think you could probably get this funded without it being a massive, ridiculous undertaking.
Absolutely. It's not something that relies on the special effects and the visual effects for it to be meaningful. There are some movies out there that you just go to the cinema to see the explosions, or to see how they've managed to do this huge thing. And the character development is very much secondary. And for me, the character is everything. So I think around that, the way the fights and the chases are filmed is I think it's important to make them look authentic and real. And that's probably where the budget would be, and the time and the skill to put into having the actors work with it. But it doesn't have to be, a mega. There are no UFOs flying in and exploding.
Well, not in this draft, but I'm hopeful that after we talk a little bit, I'm going to convince you that when the movie comes, we need some flying saucers. Well, I've got, what? Now I'm torn because I've got a couple more questions for you about making movies, but everybody that listens to the show knows I at some point have to ask you, because I ask every guest. Sure. Shamim Sarif, have you ever seen a flying saucer, and do you believe in them?
No, only underneath my teacup, I'm afraid, Robert. So, no, I haven't seen a flying saucer. Do I believe in them? I don't disbelieve in them. Let's put it that way. I don't think I've actively thought about whether I believe in flying saucers, but I do think, as Shakespeare said, there are more things on heaven and earth than we can conceive of. And so I never say never.
Gotcha. Well, they're out there, but that's another discussion. They're out there, and they need to be in the Athena Protocol 2, or at least 3.
We only have Kit, who's a British rock star who likes her cup of tea, so she may well take her tea with a saucer. So, and when she gets upset, she may well throw one. So that could be the end.
So when you're looking at adapting your own book into a movie, because obviously you did that with your first novel, Can't Think Straight?
Yes.
So when you've spent all this time with your characters in your head, and you know how they sound, you know how they look, and even the world's greatest actress isn't going to come in and do exactly 100% what you had in mind. And if she did, you should probably fire her, because you need somebody that's contributing. So how does that impact you when you're directing something that was exclusively yours that you've now got to share?
Well, it is weird, because you do think that as the author, I'm going to be all very kind of, Katya has to look like this, or Tala has to look like that and behave like that. But I'm very much about finding actors who can work with me and get the essence of the book. And that's why it's very important to me to, when I worked with Lisa Ray, with Sheetal Sheth, or Rebecca Ferguson in the last movie, it was important for me to meet with them and to talk about the story with them, just to get a sense of two things. Do they get the essence of who this character is? And how would they approach it? And the second thing is, how do I communicate with them, and do we gel creatively? Because, when you're on a film set under pressure, you want to be able to direct and have actresses who are really going to be able to respond to that under the fast conditions that you work under. And I think I was very keen to understand and to realize that I cannot act. I can't light as well as my director of photography can light. I can't put together a costume like my costume designer. So while I have an overall vision and a very strong vision, it's very important for me to let those actresses bring something to the table. And if I've got an idea of how a scene should be played or what the character is feeling, I'll communicate that. But I'll also let the actor come in and say, actually, what if she played this, that she wasn't that upset, or that she was kind of flippant? And I'd be like, yeah, okay, let's do that. Because I always like to see what comes out of that creative collaboration. I think that's the most exciting thing about making a film. Completely different from novels, where you're master of the universe, but that's the whole point of making a film. So if you're going to deny that collaboration with some very talented people, I don't think you should be making movies.
And is that part of what brings you switching back and forth a little bit? Is that desire to sometimes be 100% master of the universe before you have to share again?
Oh, for sure. There's always... I'm lucky I get to do both. Very different skills. But there's after a time when you've finished a film, and it's been nonstop people having to inspire them to lead, to answer questions, to manage. There's a time when I'm really happy to sit back in my little writing cabin. There's just me, characters on the page. Anybody gets irritating to me, I can write them out of the book or tell them off, and then and it's that quiet writer time. I cherish that too.
Cinematography is always perfect. There's no need to wait for the lighting. It's there.
That's right. It doesn't take 25 hours to set up a shot. It's like
soundtracks, whatever's on Spotify. Let's do this.
Right. Exactly.
So, have you noticed, are there little things that sentences, sentence structure, sentence word choices, things that would go into your author style? And are they a literary equivalent of your filmmaking style, or are those two completely different things?
It's a very good question. Well, I think my author style changes quite a lot between my books because, despite The Falling Snow or The World Unseen is kind of quite a little bit more, I say literary, but straightforward. I mean, not flowery, I think. But, I use a lot of longer sentences and a little bit of, there's a flow to the language that was a bit different in Athena Protocol, where I use kind of shorter sentences because to kind of match the pace of the book. Short sentences, short paragraphs. I'm a big fan of the M dash. I always kind of like that idea of, and then this. And I also like semicolons. For that reason, there's just that extra little pause that you don't get with a comma. So I use a lot of those. Not always 100% correctly. My editor tells me, and they go through and they copy edit everything to death. And sometimes I put some back. I sneak some back in. But I love those two things. I love M dashes and semicolons. And I guess there's a rhythm to those that does carry into movie making too. It's that editing is all about knowing just how long to keep that look or that moment before cutting to the next one. So maybe there's an equivalent. I haven't thought about it, but I will now.
Gotcha. So that's film semicolon is a longer shot than normal before you do the cut.
Exactly. Maybe that is. And it's just that extra beat that gives you maybe an emotional moment. Yeah.
And how does your approach change when you're getting up to? Obviously, filmmaking is its own separate thing, but when you're getting up to work on a screenplay versus a novel versus now a musical, or I think you wrote the lyrics to a couple of the songs in your first film as well.
Yeah.
So how does your approach change to writing those very different types of things?
I think that the physical process of writing stays similar in that whether I'm writing a screenplay or a novel, I always try to do it first thing in the morning and get up, maybe go for a run or a walk to clear my head, to maybe listen to those Spotify playlists that I've been building that have a meaning to that story for me, and then then I'll have something to eat and maybe scan the New York Times for a bit more inspiration, and then head into my writing cabinet and just try to get those, those pages done, so that by the time the rest of the day comes around, because I find that once you get into email and I'll just do this and I'll just call that guy, it's just, your writing time can go. So I'm kind of disciplined about doing that in the morning. But the process is much the same, I would say.
So what time are you starting typically in the morning?
Well, I like to go to bed early and get up early, and I tend to be up by 6 most mornings, 6:30. Get out there, because I like to be, because it takes me a couple of hours, I guess, by the time I go to, have a run, take a shower, have breakfast, do all of that stuff. But I like to be, at my desk by 8:30 in an ideal world, so that I can work through till lunchtime and know that I got a good solid block of creative work done.
And the writing cabin, is that a short stroll from the house? Is it right out the back door? Or?
It's like 5 steps from the house. We don't have a huge garden, but this was, over the last few years, my partner now was always saying, why aren't you writing a book? Why aren't you writing a book? And I'm like, it's impossible in the house. We have 2 kids. The doorbell's always going. You're always on the phone. Somebody's always asking me something, emails. And so she didn't say anything, but, she's like, I was like, it would be great to have a room of my own in the next house that we have, whenever that might be. And then suddenly these guys appeared, with all these planks of wood and stuff like that. And they started putting this thing up in the garden. And it was like the best Christmas present I ever got, because it's beautiful. It's insulated. It's got heat and light. And it just is kind of a separation. I think when I go out there, I know that's what I'm going to be working on. I don't take my phone out there. People know that they shouldn't come out and disturb me unless it's super, super urgent. And it's just, I think it's moving to a different headspace. And that, what Virginia Woolf talked about, a room of your own. It's so important.
So it was a surprise cabin. Were you able to have input into it before it was done, or?
A little bit, and the color of the, but it's just a cute wooden cabin. I was just so thrilled to get that. It was just literally the best present ever. So yeah, so it was a big surprise, and it made a huge difference, honestly, to my writing and my output. Because I think when you have kids and you have a busy life, because we're juggling film, we have a film production company. So I write for film, I direct for film, I direct for TV, and write novels. It's really great to have a space that is just about that pure creative process.
Do you handwrite, or do you take a computer out there? And if so, do you allow it to be on the internet?
I do have a computer out there. I have a big screen, and I do have internet. It's rather slow, so it's not very tempting. But I do find it important, because sometimes I want to just jump online and just check something quick while I'm writing, or do a bit of research. I'll even do my research out there as well. So yeah, I do have internet, but I don't have any email, any notifications, any WhatsApp, anything like that. So it's just purely a link to the outside world.
And I know that the film industry is a lot of hurry up and wait sometimes, or a lot of, we love this, now let us put it through 5 more hurdles before we can get any kind of start date or anything else. Oh. So are you able to kind of write in the gaps while you're waiting for the stars to align to go move on the next project?
Yes, that's exactly it. And I think that's what's so great about being able to do all these things, is that I sometimes, you'll write a screenplay and it's not like a month later it's in production. It's just, it drags as all the money gets put together, you have meetings, whatever. So during those downtimes, we're developing other projects, where I'm writing books. It's great to be able to switch between the two.
When we chatted with Greg Millman, who is also a screenwriter and filmmaker,
yeah,
he told me that he didn't even bother sending his book to an agent or an editor. He said, no, I'm self-publishing it. It's all 100% me. Nobody is weighing in on this thing. I'm doing this. And it was a wonderful refuge from that Hollywood lifestyle of waiting until everybody gets on board.
There's that. Yeah. Listen, with the publishing industry, I think it's just tough to get into and tough to find that agent and that publisher, for sure. And I think self-publishing is so great that it gives, voices to people that, other people don't deem commercial enough for them to be with a publisher for whatever reason. So I think it's very important. But for me, I find a big difference between even having an agent and a mainstream publisher, there's a lot more respect for the author in that process. And if there are edits, it's definitely, what do you think about this? And they'll give you suggestions and then lead you to it. And in the case of the Athena Protocol, I found that those edits were really helpful and helped elevate it to make it more than what I wanted. But in the movie industry, that kind of interference can sometimes be ridiculous or take you completely off the track of what you creatively had in mind. So, which is partly why we've worked as independent filmmakers with our own company for such a long time.
I suppose the flip side of that would be that when you're working on your novel, it's all you. There's no wonderful actress to come in and bring her piece to it. It's whatever you've got up here is what you've got to work with, right?
Absolutely. It's all, it's the writer is everything. But that's great too. I think that's what our imaginations are for. So it's nice to be able to do that.
And so I know your first full-length film was based on your novel, so I'm assuming you broke out as a novelist first and then a filmmaker?
Yes, I did. So my first full-length piece of work was a screenplay, actually, based off a short story that had been published, and that got optioned, but it didn't get made. And then while that was in progress, I was working on my first novel. And after that got sold, and we won a couple of prizes and got some traction, I kind of just went forward. I was working at another job.
You had a day job at that point?
Yeah, I did. I was working actually in my dad's company. It was financial services and stuff like that. It was not at all what I wanted to be doing. But I also, my parents had a strong work ethic. It wasn't like you could say, "Oh, I'm going to just stay home and be a writer." I felt like I had to prove myself. So once I'd had something optioned, I'd had some things published, and my book was, published as well. Then I felt, okay, I want to just give this a go full time.
So how many books did you have to write before you got somebody interested in that first one, or was it the first one that you wrote?
It was the first one. And every writer goes through that rejection process of agents and publishers, and that was no different. But it was pretty quick that I found an agent that really sparked to it, and then slowly we went along and we found the right publisher for it, and they really got behind it, and were very lovely. A relatively small publishing house, but a very well respected one, and it did great.
So when did you decide that you also wanted to do filmmaking, or had you always wanted to do both?
I'd always wanted to do both, and I definitely had studied screenwriting, on my own, and had, been writing screenplays, so I'd learned that craft early on, and then I got an opportunity to direct, and I had just done a few short courses in directing. It was something that I was thinking about for the future, but when this opportunity came up for I Can't Think Straight, I just kind of thought, well, how often is this going to happen? Let me give it a go, and it's insane on the one hand because it was my first time on a film set and I was the director, and it turned into a real baptism of fire because we had a torrid time on that movie. We had a very difficult so-called investor. The classic first movie. Days get chopped out of your schedule. You're getting thrown out of locations. You have one reel of film left to do. Too many shots. So it was just all chaos. But having got through it was probably the best film school ever.
Just get in there and survive, and then okay, well, it didn't kill me, so. And it went on to do very well, and now you're developing it again into a musical. So what is that process like? This story you've already told twice, getting ready to tell it a third time in a new medium.
Yeah, well, it was interesting. So I Can't Think Straight was very loosely based on the story of me and Hanan, but made into a romantic comedy rather than the traumatic, culture clash between two women of color who wanted to be together. It was a very difficult time with our families, but I kind of thought, let me just explore that in a more comedic, romantic way. And so that's how I Can't Think Straight came about. But I think the structure of it lends itself to being a musical, and my manager introduced me to a wonderful young woman who writes musicals for books for musicals, and so she said, "Let's work on this together." So we're just still in the very early stages and just talking to a really talented composer who also worked on the movie. So, I think musicals take years to get produced. So we're still in the very early stages, but I'm very excited about it because I love musicals. So it would be, and I think there's an East meets West theme there. I think it's a love conquers all. So I think it has everything that it needs to be really exciting.
And then you'll be, I assume, writing the lyrics, or will you just be directing the film version, or how involved will you be?
I don't know. Let's see. I mean, initially I'll co-write the musical, the book of the musical with this writer because it's not something that I have tremendous experience in. And then I suspect the lyrics and the words will be primarily through the composer. But I'd love to get involved in some of that, given the choice. So let's see. I'll do as much as they'll let me.
That's what I'd love to do because I did film school for a while right away. So I learned quickly that I'm not great with collaboration. I'm not okay with people impacting my vision. So okay, there's a solution for that. I'll go write novels, and then I can be as selfish as I want to be, which is wonderful. But musicals, I just flat don't have the talent. I can't sing. I can't. But that is the thing I most would want to do because I'm so in awe of other people who can do it well. Will this be a one and done for you, or will this be the start of a whole new career in musicals, you think?
Never say never, because I really love musicals. But, for me, I'm looking at this as being, a learning experience as well. I hope something that I can bring, something to, because I know the characters so well and I know the story so well. But, at the same time, I'm interested to learn the process of how a musical gets written and gets made and gets financed and produced. So once I've been through that, maybe I'll want to do more, or maybe I'll say never again. Who knows?
Well, I hope not. And are there other genres, other forms of storytelling that you're yearning to do as well?
No, I think, I feel like right now is a really interesting time in the film industry and the TV industry. And with this book coming out and it's really hitting the shelves, with some great reviews, I feel like I have my hands full with all of these. I'm really looking forward to doing more TV directing as well. I'm directing my first TV show currently here in Toronto.
Can you say it was?
Yes, it's a show called the Murdoch Mysteries, which is probably one of the most popular shows in Canada and around the world. So I'm coming in as one of the episodic directors on that, and it's been a fantastic experience so far. So I think for now, things are going, but I would never say never. I mean, I love plays. I love short form. I think short form webisodes have got a lot of potential in the future. So, I think I'm open to just storytelling in whatever way makes sense for the story. So for the Athena Protocol, that was not meant to be a piece of literary fiction. In my mind, it was always an action-adventure thriller with a message and with characters that you could care about. So I'm happy to learn and adapt to genres and formats as I go, and I feel really privileged to be able to work across those. So I won't say no to anything as long as it makes sense for the story.
Did you see yourself doing an Athena Protocol video game?
Oh, very much so. Very much so. I've got, again, those two sons, they'd be all over that. So, yeah, I think this would be an amazing video game. I'm not much of a gamer, but, I've seen them play things like The Last of Us and Biosphere, I think. Maybe I'm getting that wrong. I don't know. Bioshock, thank you. So, I'll be like, oh. But those kind of very story-based, character-driven games where you're running one big quest, and I think that could be really interesting because there's so many mission-based things they could do. So yeah, I'd love that.
They're very cinematic. You mentioned The Last of Us. That's the center of my whole next year of what's coming out is The Last of Us Part 2, and then there's everything else.
Right. Because actually, when my youngest son was reading Athena Protocol, he said, you should look at these, he said, because this, it has elements of the character plus the story. And so, of course, there's no way I could start to get into playing that, with the kind of, I thought if I get into that, I'll lose all my creative work time. So I just kind of read a little bit about it and watched a few videos about it, and he told me a lot about the story. And I thought, yeah, it looked really exciting. And, I thought, what an interesting way to do a game. I would much rather that than just kind of an app-based video game. Yeah.
Sure. I mean, it sounds like you can kind of do a little bit of anything you want.
Well, I can try.
So you just wake up with boundless enthusiasm for storytelling on a regular basis, and because you're obviously you're working. You said it hadn't been a day off in quite a bit, so
Yeah.
you must love it, or you would at this point go back and do more financial services and call it a day.
That's not going to be me. Listen, I do love it, and I think there's two things fueling that. One is that I'm excited that the last year or two has seen a real shift towards content that's focused on women, content focused on diversity. And having spent the first 15 years of my career fighting for those things to be looked at seriously, fighting for the funding, fighting for people to be interested in distributing content like that. Now that people are turning around to me and going, hey, you're producing stuff like the Athena Protocol that we think is really cool, I'm excited by that. I really am. I think it's great because, I don't talk about it too much, but it's been a slog in many, many ways. It sounds like a fairy tale story, and I do this and I direct a film. But it hasn't been easy to get that content made because I didn't want to compromise. I didn't want to make one of them a man or make one of them white or whatever their requirements were.
That was said to you with a straight face by someone?
100%. I've had that. I've had, can you de-gay that character? I've had all of these in bona fide meetings with people who are top of their field in this industry. Not the book industry, the film industry. So that just for me, as I wake up every morning thinking, thank God this didn't happen 30 years from now when I'm like, maybe too tired to take advantage of it. And then and the second part of that is intellectually and emotionally exciting for me. The second part of that is I've also had the last 15 years, 20 years bringing up kids. So, that, I don't know if you have kids, but that's busy. We've had help, and my wife's been amazing as the support on that. But they take it out of you. So now they're older. I wake up on a Saturday or Sunday. Traditionally the days when I think, please let them sleep until 5:30. Now nobody wakes up before 11 or 12, and when they do, they don't need me to bath them, dress them, or tell them what to do. So I have all this time, and I still have probably more energy, I feel, than I did when I was 25. So yeah, I'm feeling like, touch wood, this is a great time to be really focusing again on my career, and I have all this time that was devoted to family. I still spend a lot of time with my family, but they need me less. And so I can come out and do a TV show or, see them when they come back from school or university. But I've still got all this time during the day, and I really want to make the most of it.
Is your wife working a job? Has she traditionally worked a job with health insurance and nice steady benefits while you've been engaged in creative pursuits? Or
we're too insane risk. We like two people who just run towards risk. We're absolutely insane. So there's been lots of sleepless nights. But on the plus side, I actually pushed her she's an entrepreneur. So she's always like starting businesses, run her own businesses. And I pushed her to become a film producer. So she's actually produced all of our films. So the great thing about that is we've worked together. We've been able to take our kids with us, say if we were shooting in South Africa 10 years ago. The downside is there are no benefits with this job, and there's no steady paycheck. So it's been up and down, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. So she's still very much involved with everything that we're doing. And if we make TV or film together, she's a very integral part of that creative and production side of things.
And when you do that, can you come home and set it aside and just we're at home now? We don't have to talk about the production tomorrow or the rest of it? Or is it comforting to have somebody that knows exactly what has to happen for the shoot tomorrow and wants to talk about it?
I think so. In a way, I get that. And there are times when we just switch off and we'll, go to a movie or whatever. But most of the time we do talk about our work because we're both excited about it and passionate about it. Some days you just want to go, oh, please don't ask me if I got that done or I got this done. We just need to just give me a break. So of course there's always that. But I think we're very different people. She's very efficient. She's very spreadsheet. She's very on top of everything being done on time. I'm a bit more, I need that time and space in order to be able to create the stories that we're doing. So we try to respect that about each other, and so far so good.
I know we're coming to the end of our time together, which hurts because it's been such a fascinating conversation. I will go on asking you questions all day. I won't. How about two more and we'll call it a day? Is that fair?
That sounds great.
So now there's a lot of pressure on him. I hope it's a good question. But I did want to circle back and ask you about public speaking because you've given multiple TED Talks available now. Esteemed audience, go watch them. They're worth seeking out. And you've done several corporate speaking gigs. Done speaking around the world. But you mentioned you're not an actress, which strikes me because obviously you're not bothered by getting in front of people. So what is the secret to great public speaking? Since I know that terrifies a fair amount of the audience who's listening, I just want to write my books, don't maybe go talk about them. What's the secret to good public speaking, and why doesn't that lend itself to acting?
So let me tell you, the first time I had to go on a radio show for The World Unseen, my first book, they sent a car to collect me, take me over to the BBC, put me in a studio. I thought I was going to die. I literally thought I was going to have a heart attack or throw up or just fall down dead on the street from the stress. And nobody was even going to see me on the radio, right? That was how, and I was painfully shy as a child and growing up. And then my first book signing, also, I think it was at Hay Festival or one of those for The World Unseen. I didn't look anybody in the eye the entire time. I was just signing, cripplingly embarrassed that people weren't anywhere near me. And Hanan came up to me afterwards and she said, you shortchanged those people. And I was shocked. And I said, what do you mean? And she's like, they queued for a long time to get your autograph. They really loved your book. You didn't look at them. You didn't talk to them. She's like, this is not all about you. And that was kind of a big shift for me. And I thought, oh, of course, I've been so focused on I'm shy and I hate this and I don't want to talk to people and I don't know what to say, that I wasn't thinking about their perspective, which is that they queued up. They would maybe like to get something a little bit more from me. And that shifted everything. When I wasn't so focused on myself and I was thinking about all these people who were here to see me or here to listen to me, everything became a little easier. Now, I didn't just leap onto a TED stage and give the perfect talk after that, but that was a big evolution for me in my own getting over talking in public. And it made me more interested in other people and asking, what do you do? Or what did you like about the book? And, you get to learn a lot more that way. And it's nice for people to be able to have that interaction with somebody that they admire, because if they bought your book and they liked it and they can be bothered for you to sign it, they clearly liked something about you. So, it's nice to have that connection. But with the TED Talks, I think it really, it helped me to have something that I really wanted to say. And having seen the response to I Can't Think Straight, The World Unseen, now the Athena Protocol, it becomes easier and easier for me to understand the impact that storytelling has on people and how important it is to write role models that people feel represent them, especially in the work that I do with women of color, LGBTQ. There are a lot of people that weren't represented in the last 10, 15 years. So just being able to talk about that and the stories that I've heard about that and why it made me realize how important storytelling is, it got me over my fear and stress of standing on the stage and having to, speak. And you get better and better at it as you go along. And I try to focus on the message and what I want people to hear rather than, the stress. But of course, I get nervous. My heart's going a million miles an hour every time I get on the stage, and you get better at hiding it and getting into the flow, quicker.
Just because you're focused on the importance of your message and the experience of the audience?
Yes, and I say that because I'm not superhuman. It's not like I think, now I'll just, get up and give that talk.
All evidence to the contrary.
I'm always stressed about it. I'm always nervous about it. I'm always thinking about it for a day or two beforehand, nearly obsessively. And so it takes its toll and it takes its time. But you can get past that, and that's a natural part of the process. So people shouldn't feel that, oh my God, I'm too nervous. It's something you can be. You can't be nervous, but I think if you focus about what it is that you want to say and what you want people to get out of it, and the benefit you want people to get rather than how hard this is for you, I don't know, that made it easier for me. But, that's the only advice I can give.
Tremendous advice. I'm going to keep that in mind the next time I've got to speak up and I start to get nervous. Quit making it about you. Can't get out there.
It's a quick shift.
And then my last question for you, then I know you've got a book launch to prepare for, so I'll let you get to it. But if there was one piece of advice that you could go back and offer young you that would have made your journey easier, that would have smoothed the way a little bit, what would that piece of advice be?
I think it would have been to really focus on my craft and making my work as good as it can be as earlier. I think what I did early on was buy into the writers can't be just writers, and so I spent a lot of time either working with my dad or working in other businesses that Hanan and I had put together, because in the back of my mind I was thinking I am never going to make money writing or whatever, so I better have something else. And I think if I had shifted my perspective to think, no, let me think about how I can make this work, or what are the things that I can do to make me so good that people can't ignore me as a writer. I think maybe I would have put more time into my craft than into other things earlier. But, so for young writers, I would say every hour that you can get, and I know it's not easy because people are often juggling family and work and all of these things, but don't waste hours spent, you may want to watch TV because it's so damn good now, but don't waste time doing anything that is frivolous. Cherish your hours as if they were $100 bills. You wouldn't throw a $100 bill on the street. Don't throw away an hour of your time, because that hour could be spent learning something that will make you a better writer. That might be the tipping point to making you irresistible to a big publisher or to a wider audience or to a film festival that will make the difference to your work.
It's tremendous advice. I have so enjoyed this discussion. I wish I could come back when the next Athena Protocol comes out. I would love to talk with you again. I really appreciate you making time for us today. Shamim, where can esteemed audience find you online, stalk you, buy all your books, and all that good stuff?
Well, anywhere where you can write out my full name, shamimsarif.com. It's SHAMIMSARIF.com. So that's my Twitter handle and Instagram handle. And those are the places I'm most active. I also have a Facebook page where we have our 50,000, an amazing community on there. But Twitter, Instagram, and Goodreads, please. I always am very happy to have anybody who loved the Athena Protocol. Always a 5-star review on Amazon or Goodreads is always appreciated. And if you have something to say about those, please reach out to me on any social media. It is me, and I will always get around to answering.
Wow. Anybody can reach out to you on social media, and you'll for sure answer them?
I will always do once for the direct message, but I prefer it if it's just like, in the main social media arena, because I just don't have time to answer direct messages on an ongoing basis with people that I don't know, because there's quite a lot of followers now, which is great. But come join me there. We have an incredible community of people. There've been a lot of people who've made friends through getting to know each other over my books and movies, and it's a very special group. So I would love to see people at Shamim Sarif wherever it makes sense for them.
Get in there now, esteemed audience. The Athena Protocol is about to blow up huge, and then we will never get within shouting distance of Shamim again. So now's the time.
But I'm still there.
As always, esteemed audience, head to middlegradeninja.com. Check out who's listed to appear on the podcast in the near future. Don't forget to download your free copy of Banneker Bones and the Giant Robot Bees and or the Book of David Chapter 1. They're free. Get both. It'll be fun. Shamim, I have been asking our guests to sign us off with the very ninja-like sign-off phrase, hi-ya and what have you. Will you sign us off?
Hi-ya and what have you. Is that right?
That's perfect. You did.
I always wanted